Thank you for coming out. Peter, thank you for thinking of me and including me tonight at the Global Reporting Center, and the Peter Wall Institute, of course, for making this conversation happen. My family's in the front row, so it's hard not to look at them and acknowledge them. And a few of you that are here that have supported my work. Okay, wonderful, we're up. Thank you. I can't say I would have accomplished any of this without this. I'm sure, well, I know reluctant support to allow your daughter to go off to war. And my sisters, of course, had to deal with that as well. So I've never publicly acknowledged their support to allow me the space to do that. Love you guys. So, and this crew over here, we all engage with war on a different level, but my excitement to be here with you guys tonight and sitting with you and among you is that war guides our passions, and somehow that's really comforting. I know there's several of you out here who probably have your own war story of some sort. Maybe you've left your ancestral homeland and you've come here and you're watching the tragedies of war from a distance. I'm sure that's the story. Or you've lived through war in your faraway countries and you've fled as refugees or as immigrants, or you're highly politicized and you follow the wars every day, which in itself is exhausting. I know we all know people, and maybe it's among us, who say, I can't do it, I can't follow it anymore, it's too much, right? We've all had moments of that, I have. Where it can just be exhausting to continue to know what's happening. And yet, I just want to remind you that knowing what's happening out there, because it's always over there, it's never here, right? Knowing what's happening is absolutely nothing compared to living it. And I think that's part of what we're trying to bring you tonight is living war, to have war come to your door. Just today, a quick flash of a news of a family in East Jerusalem who had lived there since the 1930s and were forced out of their homes today. And I just been thinking about it all day. You know, just paying attention for a second can disturb your day all day, right? But I just remind myself that I am given the freedom and the choice to enter and to leave, which is a privilege, and that's definitely not the case for many people on the planet today. And, you know, the small burden of knowing what's happening versus living it, having your home torn down, having the occupying force storm through your neighborhood and occupy your lands for all time, which of course happened here not that long ago. And may that always be the case for us here now, that we never know what it's like to have to flee, to grab your kids and run, or to hold your dead child. And that's something that happens around the world in conflict zones daily, especially if you're following the crisis in Syria right now. The child deaths are absolutely disturbing. Or in a flash, you lose everything, which was the case with Rena here. I had scoured Baghdad for weeks, looking for a woman to tell me her story, her brutally wounded story. And by the time I found Rena, Baghdad had declined into a degree of sectarian violence that I don't think we have a complete picture of, because it was so dangerous at the time to be in Baghdad that often Western journalists were operating either from inside the green zone without ever really leaving. And I think there's a wave, like almost a blackout of the history of this recent war in Iraq that we don't even know because of the great degree of violence, the sectarian divisions that was happening on a geographical perspective, even to consider how the sectarian violence shifted the geography of one city, of Baghdad. So if you can imagine these networks of sectarian groups shifting and moving, and neighborhoods became divided by either Shia or Sunni, and these sectarian enclaves were divided with blast walls, with security forces. So if you were one, you wouldn't necessarily go into a neighborhood of the other. And this was a huge landscape of fear that was created within Baghdad, that completely divided the city. And of course, I had to deal with that when I found Rena, because my driver was Sunni and I was asking him to enter a Shia neighborhood. And I spent some time, my parents probably won't like hearing this story actually, now that I just looked at them. Spent some time convincing my driver, Muhammad, to take me to this neighborhood, this Shia neighborhood, to see and meet this woman, Rena, that I had heard about, to see if she would agree to tell me her story and have her photograph taken, of course. And when I found her, there was a rule that we weren't allowed to stay more than half an hour and that we were never to return. And of course, once Rena and I started talking, there was a great deal of healing on some level that came to her from just simply telling her story. And I think that's a huge part of the work that journalists are doing. You know, at first I thought, what's the point of doing it if it never gets published, if nobody sees it? But I learned later that part of it was having her tell the story. No one had asked her what had happened. I was the first person that she told her story to, and she wept and wept and wept and wept. She was 8 months pregnant, walking with her youngest sister when a U.S. aerial strike had happened in Sadr City as part of the U.S. campaign to clean up the sort of non-compliant nature of Muqtada al-Sadr at the time. And the aerial strike tore off her leg and killed her sister and her unborn 8-month-old infant. So I'm going to move into a slideshow in a little bit, but there are so many stories like this, it's so hard to pull out and extract a few individual stories. I would be here all night. But the thing about Rena, the thing about everybody that I really encountered was a little bit, it's amazing how far a little bit of empathy goes in terms of allowing them just to see that somebody cared to hear their story and to tell their story. And, you know, I really went in there without anything to offer them. Of course, they saw hope in me because I was asking, and I know it went through their minds. Maybe I could get them to America. Maybe I could get them a prosthetic. Maybe I would save them in some way. And in some situations I was able to offer help, in others I wasn't. But often it's just having them tell their story. Suhad, I'm actually indirectly related to, but if you could possibly imagine for a moment being at home and baking a cake for your twin sons on their birthday and then having them not come home. Also killed in the sectarian violence, they just disappeared. And the family would scour the morgues for days and days until they finally found their bullet-riddled bodies and sort of unidentifiable in a morgue. So the work that I am going to share with you is a body of work from covering the region, just the early days of the Iraq War, daily life under curfew, the Iraqi refugee crisis in Syria, and the July War in Lebanon in 2006.
اسمي حيدر سمير أحمد، مولد 1/8. الحادث ورا السقوط.
اسمي ضياء سخي حان، مواليد 64 وانضربت 25/5/2003 ومصادفة زوجتي جابت.
أنا اسمي سيف يوسف حنان. أنا كنت مريض، يعني سخنت صارت يعني شلون، فرحنا أنا وابن عمي بالسيارة عندنا جسر مسافة الجسر.
محمد علي عبد الهادي. وبعد الغداء هنا ببيتنا هذا كان بيت بنتي موجود بالشارع المجاور. مرينا وياي 5 أشخاص بسيارة مال قرايبي مرسيدس.
نصير عبد الرحمن، مواليد 1960.
على مود نمر بالبيت.
تاريخ بالضبط 24/12/2004. 24/12/2004 كانت حكومة هياد علاوي. يعني تقريبا حكومة هياد علاوي برأيي يعني كانت زينة، يعني أحسن من هاي الحكومات. المهم رجعت البيت.
اسم رزاق راشد عباس، مواليد 1952. الحالة الزوجية متزوج. في الشرطة عندي 32 سنة. كنت هنا كانت بداية رمضان سنة 2003.
27/10/2003
كان بداية
مواليد 74 1974.